we're back. Welcome to No Direction Beyond, the Starfinder news, reviews, and interviews podcast, episode 42. I'm Vanessa Hoskins.
I'm Alexander Agunas, the Everyman Gamer.
And I'm Owen Casey Stevens.
And here today, we have a bunch of news that has come out about Starfinder recently that we want to dig into, and a little bit of banter for you as you get our opinions. Each of us is a freelancer for Starfinder and in the RPG industry, and have worked on many of these products. So we have some special insight for you today. The first thing I want to mention is the big news is Alexa Play Starfinder.
Yes.
This, of course, was their big 12.16 announcement that they worked on so much, and we have a really great special edition for you. So we're not going to dig too deeply on this episode, but if that is something that really gets you interested, going, wait, you said what? We're going to play Starfinder on Alexa from Amazon? That's what we're doing? There's a whole special edition that goes into it, but you heard it, that's what it is. Alex, I know you didn't get a chance to partake in that special edition, so have you had a chance to play it?
Yeah, I haven't finished it all the way through. I've played it for about 20 minutes. I got past the first real fight, and that's about where I'm at so far.
Okay. And what are your impressions of it? Does this seem like something that you think you'll continue playing or find an avenue for?
Well, for me, since this very clearly feels like it's the preview for a full Dead Sons experience over Alexa, I feel like I need to know what the price point is first. I don't know if I'm really motivated to do this because James and I played Dead Sons, so I kind of know what's going to happen already. I think that it's fine. It seems like it's cool. I'm not really sure who it's aimed at is my only question about it. But overall, I think the production value I was really surprised at. The voice acting is great, and James L. Sutter does a wonderful job adapting the adventure to what is essentially a Amazon version of a choose your own adventure book. I kind of like that.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money. I know we talked a lot about that in the special as well, that it's sort of an elevated form of that genre.
Yeah.
I know, Owen, you had mentioned before about how the dice rolling really makes it truly unique because going down that corridor doesn't always lead the same results depending on what your rolls are.
Yeah, it reminds me more of the old Lone Wolf books or the Tunnels and Trails solo adventures, because it is a solo RPG experience rather than just a solo narrative experience. It's not purely choosing the things that are going to end up determining what branch of a story you go down. You actually have to make perception checks and possibly diplomacy rolls or interaction, because it's using the beginner box rules. And I think that is both more interesting from a game point of view. I'm not necessarily convinced that a select the next paragraph story like Choose Your Own Adventure qualifies as a game necessarily. You will always get the same set of results with the same choices. But this definitely is a game, even if it's an interactive voice-activated assistant game.
Yeah.
But I think this is very much a wave of things to come, and I'm very excited to see like Alex says, what the full episodes start with, because this is a free teaser, and then much like the beginner box adventure it's based off of, it is supposed to introduce you to the concept and the gameplay, and then once you are comfortable with that, they will have room to be able to do more things, and I'm really looking forward to see what those more things are.
I think that James and I are really going to have to make sure that we put an effort in to review this one because we are in a position where we have played through all of Dead Sons, so we'll have a comparison for what the experience is like translated. I am excited about the prospect. I'm not sure if I think that it's gonna be as big as some people think it's gonna be, but I think that any new innovation, there are always doubts about it at some point, so I'm trying to keep an open mind about it.
Well, and I don't think any GM I know other than Alexa would ever let me play in the 6th Dead Son adventure because I wrote it. So this is an opportunity for me get to experience this stuff in a way that I have not ever gotten to, especially with Dead Sons, because I developed one of those. I wrote one. I was very much part of the process of creating a more recent adventure since I left. There are some that I don't know forwards and backwards, but with Dead Sons I do. So but I won't know how they've adapted it. And that's also going to give me that discovery experience for this storyline, which I don't think there's any other way I could get.
Yeah, it's gonna be like, what did Sutter do to my baby? And then if you don't like something, you can go, Sutter!
Yeah, I'll shake my fist at the sky. That's exactly what I'll do.
Do we know if they're gonna add additional playable characters beyond the two that are in it, or is it gonna stay Raya or Quig?
Yeah, they
There-
talked
there will-
about. Yeah, I was gonna say they talked about adding new ones and basically putting them behind a paywall. So once you get premium content, you can play Obadiah and things like that.
That's
My
pretty
understanding
cool.
is you'll be able to play all of the original Iconics except Raya. Because Raya is a come-along companion.
Oh, so
Yeah, she's your
so wait-
sidekick from the beginning. So I think the idea
Right.
is that it's sort of retooled for like a two-person game. And is that right? And then so that's what it seemed like anyway to me. So you have your character and then you have your sidekick. And maybe they'll introduce other sidekicks, who knows?
Oh, I thought that even in the base one you could play between Quig or Raya. Who's the other playable character then if it's not Quig?
You can play Quig or help me, Vanessa.
You can play Quig, you can play Ipsef, and you can play Navasi.
That's it.
Okay, all right. I went through the whole thing and I got Quig and I was like, oh, Quig's who I wanted to play. That's fine. Let's do this. I didn't really like experiment with all the different playable character options.
Well, it's nice though that the character creation, which asks you a series of questions, got you the character you wanted to play with.
I know, that was cool. I was like, oh,
Well, especially if you're not, used to role-playing games, even if they're like, there's so-and-so who does damage, and so-and-so who's skilled, and so-and-so who's good at talking, and you're going, wait, what am I choosing? I don't know
Yeah.
what these do. I like how they put it in these sort of decision-making processes. It's like, all right, this is happening. What of these options are you going to choose? Oh, I'm going to do this. Okay, great.
I like if you're playing Quig, they offer you a flamethrower in the initial adventure as the first thing you do in the store. I was like, oh, good. You told me that I had that I built a flamethrower, and now you're giving me one. This is smart. Good job.
You promised me
and-
something, and then I got it.
Yes.
Yeah, very, very clearly, given that you end up getting told that you used to have a hail pistol, I'm reasonably sure that you used to have a flamethrower. It sounds like Quig's a little rough with his equipment. The other thing I'm really excited about this, and I don't mean to go too down a rabbit hole because we do have another whole episode dedicated to it, but I have some relatives who have always really wanted to better understand what these games are that I have been doing for 20 years, and they just don't. And even if you get out a beginner box, that is just a lot for them to take in, right?
Yeah.
They really want to take 15 minutes and understand what's going on, at least some. And so now I can just bring an Alexa-equipped smartphone and I can say, okay, it's a lot like this. Here, each of you make a decision next time we go along, and then you will all have played a little Starfinder.
Mhm.
That's a great idea. I do like that. I'm going to have to bring it to my next family gathering.
Gosh,
Right.
I wonder if I can get my
Speaking-
parents to do that.
Speaking of bringing things to our next family gathering, they announced the Starfinder Core Rulebook Pocket Edition, which is going to be
finally.
fantastic. Just think of all those poor GMs and players who have had their backs broken over this giant Core Rulebook.
Oh, I'm so excited. I wanted a pocket edition the minute that I saw that book. Like I'm gonna flash back to what was it? Oh, in like 2017 that Starfinder came out. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm gonna flash back to 2017 at Gen Con where like I'm standing in line with my big book and like I look over and just in front of me a line, a wall of GMs, all of them buying Starfinder, and there's this one poor dude whose arms are full, he's stacked tall with 5 core rulebooks. Why do you have 5 core rulebooks? I ask. Oh, well, I want to make sure that every player at my table has one. I'm like, you are dedicated and you are dedicated and kind, sir. Wow, your arms. You're going to be so ripped at the end of this convention.
Yeah,
And the
that
fact
sounds like
of the
a
matter
hernia
is
in the making.
My experience from the Starfinder or the Pathfinder pocket editions is that they are great if you're not flipping through them all the time, right? They are just not as durable. So you never want your brand new 400, 500 page RPG to specifically come out in a pocket edition yet, because as people are learning it, they will tear those things apart. So you really want the saddle-stitched hardback. And we already had quality control issues with the first round of Starfinder, which wasn't our fault.
I'm so glad you said that because I was going to make that joke after you talked about the paperbacks tearing.
Right. So there already was an an issue, and that annoyed people. You don't want to risk that greater annoyance by giving them a cheaper, smaller, lighter product that isn't as durable. I don't think people realize how much less they flip through their pocket editions, because you usually grab the pocket edition after you already mostly know the game. So you're not doing it so I can make my character and pick my spells, and you're doing it mostly to look stuff up because you only remember 80% of it. And so it's just not taking as heavy a use.
Yeah, you're like, wait, what exactly could I do with the third level of the flight spell? I don't remember. Let me just
Exactly.
double check. Yeah, how
Right.
fast did I move? Okay.
So I think it's very smart of Paizo not to release those immediately. And of course, until you've got, and this is yet another print run, right? You want to make sure that a book is going to be successful enough to justify 2 separate print runs
And 2
prior
separate
to putting it out in a
formats
new
and-
format.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just like the Starfinder Core Rulebook Pocket Editions, this is going to be fantastic for just lightening the load, especially now we've got COM out there, so GMs are dragging that along and players are dragging that along. It'll be good to lighten that a bit.
I am really curious to see where the Pocket Edition line goes for Starfinder in the future, if only because the Alien archives are so small, and so are like most of the books. Starfinder's books only hit usually like about 150, 160 pages, if I recall correctly, with the exception of the core rulebook. So like, are they going to have these little tiny Alien archives? Are they going to like take them and like merge them together? I'm super curious to see
There's
what it looks
no
like.
way they'll merge them together. There's
No?
just no way. No. First of all, if you merge them together, the utility goes down because now the index for one is in the middle of the other,
That's
right?
fair.
Or you have to reshuffle them all together, at which point, in order to have this small print run, because they're not as big as the core print runs, you're having to do a lot more work. Right now, I'm pretty sure what they do is they grab a dial and they say, okay, dial it down to 80%, hit soft cover instead of hard printer, set it to the printer, right? They're not putting in errata. They're not fixing anything. These are just small reprints, and therefore that smaller print run makes sense because it's just the cost of printing. There's no development cost on there. If you wanted to shuffle 2 of these books together, either you would have to really shuffle it, in which case, well, once you've opened that up, we know there's a misspelling here and this rule is wrong, etc. And if you're going to do that, you'd want to release it in hardback first, because there are people that want 320 instead of 160-page books.
The archive of archives.
Yeah. I am reasonably certain.
Archive.
The archive. The arcane archive. We'll put all the spells in it. I am reasonably certain that what they will do is they'll put out Alien Archive, and they'll see how it sells. And if it's not popular, they won't do more Alien Archives. Now, Pact Worlds, for instance, is 220 something, so it's a little bigger than the Starfinder standard.
But it's also less
otherwise,
punchy, right? Like, you're not necessarily looking up as many rules in Pact Worlds. Like, there's stuff in there, but it's not rules heavy the way Armory is, the way COM is.
It's not rules heavy the way Armory is.
Yeah, so maybe that book wouldn't get a pocket edition print just because you don't expect to see it referenced as often at the table.
I think they will. I mean, I think they will try everything once, all the hardbacks, because otherwise they're leaving money on the table if they're popular.
That's
But
true.
Armory,
That was really pro. You were like, raw.
well, it turns out I still write for this, is also only 160, but I am reasonably sure that the Armory is absolutely going to get a pocket edition.
Yeah.
They might do Armory before Alien Archive.
If I was in charge, that's what I would do. I would get
Yeah.
Armory out there right away. There are so many players who reference it and buy equipment out of it and use it every single time they sit at the table. You want to get that into their hands. My third on the list would probably become
the monster books sell really well in pocket editions. I think lots of GMs like to have the pocket edition of the monster manual because the full stat blocks for monsters aren't in the adventure. Right?
Okay.
So they like being able to have all their bestiaries, or in this case, all their Alien Archives, so that this book, and I've got everything I need for the adventure. And I mean, traditionally, they've done them in the order that they are initially published. So my guess is that they're just going to give it a go, put out the Alien Archive, and see how it is received. And then if that is unpopular, they might start messing with the format.
I know for me, I'm really hoping that since second edition is getting bestiary cards, that they make Alien Archive cards too. Those I've watched Jason Bowman use them on Oblivion Oath, and oh my gosh, I need those. Just please shower me with your cards.
Again, if they're popular enough, I can't imagine they wouldn't do it.
All right, so listen, fans, even if you only play Starfinder and don't play Pathfinder second edition, please buy the bestiary cards. Make my dreams come true.
I mean, It's the sad truth, right? There are things like, hey, how do we make sure that we get this product? Like, I don't want a hardback. I only want the pocket edition. Well, the better the hardback sells, the more likely it is they'll do a pocket edition, because that is their one real gauge to know if something is going to be popular enough.
I know, that's what I keep saying to our fans who are like, I want Kitsune and this and that. And I'm like, no, just tell them, do it. You got to give them data. Be a number in the machine. All right, but that's enough for that. I'm really excited for all of this cool pocket edition stuff, though.
Yeah, it's going to be great, especially for our Starfinder Society players, who, by the way, had an additional resource update not too long ago that had some fantastic and also tragic
Heartbreaking.
decisions. Heartbreaking decisions.
So I want to preface that when we start talking about COM and its availability, this we are not a unbiased podcast. We are absolutely biased. Like you're talking to the developer, Owen Casey Stevens, the lead developer, and you're talking to two prolific freelancers who worked heavily on this book. So
well, we have on the book, but yeah.
Prolific, you're fine.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, we're very biased. So please keep that in mind when you hear our opinions.
Indeed. So the first thing that is going to cause so many nerd tears is that they removed the Ruining of Fangs from Dead Sons 2. This was like the AAA plus you must have item if you're a melee character. There are so many people out there with unarmed Vesk builds with running around with Rings of Fangs doing massive amounts of damage that are now just going to be like, why? Why do I have this character? I want a full rebuild.
Yeah, but so in some sense, like I'm less sympathetic to the ring to other options, because in my personal opinion, if you need an item for a build to work, that probably means the item is too strong or the build itself is too weak. And
okay, but Alex, in Starfinder, everything after first level is an item.
That's
right?
true.
If I want to use a flamethrower, powered armor, I want a powered armor build, and powered armor doesn't come into the game until 6th level. So
yeah, that's true.
In Pathfinder, you could say, well, I have to have a great sword. Okay, a great sword isn't an item. But in Starfinder, with leveled equipment, you really do have to look at what equipment exists at various levels that will complement this build. Because otherwise, if you're like, well, I'm going to use a injector rifle. Oh, injector rifles only exist at first level. I have now designed a character that by 3rd level can't keep up.
So then, with that in mind, do you have any thoughts on the banning of the Ring of Fangs, Owen? I think you were a developer on that on Dead Sons 2, weren't you? That's where the item is from.
I am not a developer on Dead Science 2. Instead, I wrote the Ring of Fangs. I wrote that article, but did not develop it. So the buck always stops with the developer. So here's my thought on it. The organized play developers and organizers at Paizo are amongst the best in the world. If definitely. They feel that item is not conducive to a fun game environment in their game environment, I believe them. I trust them. I do not have the organized play running experience to feel like I should be second guessing them on something like that. And you're never going to have an organized play that tries to do what both Pathfinder and Starfinder Society is, which is to create as close to possible the same experience for the same adventure at multiple tables, even with different players and different GMs, and allow everything into a book when the book is being designed primarily for people to play at home. Right? That's like there are optional rules that get thrown in all the time to these books. And you never expect that some of them are directly contradictory. So you're never going to have all of that stuff. I personally think you just have to trust that the people who are doing this professionally with years and years and years of experience are probably right about what, for whatever reason, is detracting fun overall, even if it's doing so in a way that you might not have experienced at a table you're sitting at, because they've got data that we don't have.
Can I offer and not really a counterpoint, but like a different opinion on that?
Of course you can. You asked me my opinion. That's my opinion. By all means, give me your opinion.
So My opinion is that I think you're right. I think that if
Oh, well, of course you're allowed to say you
no,
think I'm right. I'm
but-
never going to argue with you saying you think I'm right.
I want to start with that, and then I'm going to take it in a different direction.
But
Yeah, exactly. So I do think you're right. I think that it's important for organized play to be the GM of basically every organized play table in the world. That's sort of like on the cookie cutter, right? But I think that there's an unfortunate perception of the player base that if organized play doesn't like something, that means that it shouldn't be allowed at a table, and that there are GMs who look at what organized play's decisions are and use those decisions, just carry them over without really thinking about like why those changes might have been made, or like whether or not their own adventures should be changed, like to accommodate what a player is interested in. I think that when I have basically seen like I think it stems from in first edition there was a very long time where books like Players Companions never got errata or like significant updates from Paizo, and most of the feedback that came back was organized play deciding whether or not something was allowed in their campaign. And that also stems from them making like campaign clarifications. So I think that there is an unfortunate tendency for GMs to look at organized play's decisions and say, oh, if organized play doesn't think this works for them, this probably doesn't work for me. It's probably broken and I shouldn't use it. Which
Maybe. They definitely
Good.
make flavor decisions. I don't think this is one of those flavor decisions, just because the Ring of Fangs is so first
Yeah.
in class, best in slot good. But I do think that they make a lot of their decisions based on flavor. And actually going through some of the other additional resources stuff, I think that explains at least some of what's happening in Com, though it makes me sad.
yeah.
So I don't want to dwell on the Ring of Fangs too much.
there is one more thing I want to say about the Ring of Flames,
Oh, please
Fangs,
do.
which is
Please do.
flavor related. Because we very intentionally built a lot of the melee without an explicit melee weapon options in Starfinder on unarmed strike. And for example, shields give you an unarmed strike. There is, even within Starfinder, even within the design team, a disagreement about whether a Ring of Fangs should apply to the unarmed strike made by a shield. Right? If I have a shield, it may let me do an unarmed strike. This says it gives me damage to an unarmed strike. But does the shield get fangs? Now, personally, I'm fine with just saying the shield gets fangs. It's magic. It's not a problem. Because the math is consistent throughout. So when I was designing some of these options, I thought, yes, of course it all stacks. Then you have other people come along and say, look, it doesn't matter what's going on in my mouth, which is clearly the intent of this item. My shield should not then be more dangerous. So there could well be a series of decisions that we could allow it, but then not allow it with shields, but then people who are using shields get unhappy, etc. That means it's just too contentious, and cutting it makes sense, even if it is not overbalanced.
Interesting.
That's a very insightful point. Since you are so well versed, we actually have a question from chat. And by the way, this is a great time to mention that we record this live in front of a Twitch audience. No Direction
folks.
shows are every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And we switch between No Direction Beyond and No Direction Prime. So come join us live and you can ask your very live questions. So get into the question. Roll for Combat wants to know if grenades can crit when you throw or aim for the floor and the rules are unclear.
That's Stephen Glicker.
It sure is.
I tell you now that that's not just Roll for Combat. That is specifically Stephen Glicker.
Yes, it is.
So here's the thing. I can't make that ruling anymore. That is now Joe Bassini's job.
Right.
I can tell you that rules as written in the beginner box, where a grenade is just an attack roll, then sure, it probably ought to be a crit. You could make the argument, if I was a GM, I probably would make the argument that if it's doing damage to the floor that you attacked, if we're actually rolling for that, that it'll do double damage for that. But you haven't made an attack roll against everyone else. The attack roll is just for cross-section. Everyone else is making a saving throw normally for the explode effect, and saves don't relate to critical hits. So I personally would, looking at the rules, assume that you cannot crit with a grenade against anything except the floor, which is the cross-section that you're actually attacking. But that's Joe Passini's rule now. So if you want an official ruling, he is the Starfinder lead designer. Go bug him.
Yeah, I was actually going to say something similar in that we can't make an official rules decision, but we can, as experienced GMs and folks who've worked on the game, make an informed decision. And for me, I would do the same thing. If you are saying, I'm going to aim for this intersection to hit those 3 space goblins, and you roll a natural 20, I will make that a crit against the floor. Now, if they happen to be standing on, I don't know, a catwalk, that could be kind of interesting. But, otherwise, it's not going to be double damage on the goblins. So.
Yeah, I feel similarly. That would be my answer too, because you're not hitting with the explosion, you're dodging the explosion. So there are no basic saving throws in Starfinder.
And as a design note, I believe grenades are the only category of weapon where no example has a critical hit effect listed.
Mm-hmm.
If there were any grenades with critical hit effects, we would know that you had to be able to have a critical. Since there are none, and I don't think there's any other table in the weapons section where none of them have a critical hit effect, that suggests to me they weren't designed for criticals.
Yes, that sounds accurate.
That would suggest that. All right, moving on to our additional resources update for Starfinder Society. Dawn of Flame got sanctioned. I'm not going to go into every single option, but tons of great options in that series. So we're glad that that's out there, especially for everyone playing that adventure path that wants to get credit. So that's pretty cool. And actually use the stuff. Alien Archive 3 was sanctioned. Pretty much what you would expect. I don't know if you have any opinions on this, but none of the races are allowed unless you have boons.
No, one is. One of them is.
You're right. I'm sorry.
It's the Gumby guys. The guys that are half centaur, half Gumby.
The Izzlegoons.
Yes, those. The Gumby guys.
They are 6-limbed knuckle walkers. So you can either have a walking around on 4 out of your 6 limbs, or walking around on 2 out of your 6 limbs, and
they're
then
so good.
You get 4 arms. They're pretty cool. And actually, the way they came about was really neat. I think we talked about this on the show before, but it's worth mentioning again. They had a scenario where you found sort of the secret retreat of the Izzlegoons that had gone off and decided to eschew high technology and live a slightly more simple life. And you had the opportunity to sell them out essentially to the big corporations or keep their secret. And essentially, those little reporting boxes are important because enough people said, yeah, we're going to keep their secret, that the Izzlegoons thought, you know what, you guys are A-okay. And a few of us that decided they want to leave the planet and become adventurers, well, we're going to let them do that.
Yeah, I know James is really excited. He wants to make a biohacker one of those Izzlegoons. So he's just been waiting for the sanction. Like literally every week he's like, more time passes.
Well, he's got his chance now.
He is.
One thing that also didn't surprise me, though I did shed a single solitary tear, is that there's no Flux Fig. That was that silly item that let you basically get a new random race. But you didn't have to die and get reincarnated for it. It was just, here, eat this. Haha, now you're something else.
I mean, as a transhumanism angle, I like having the rules for that. As an organized play angle, I absolutely understand why they don't want that in organized play.
Yeah.
Yep.
When I was writing Bastards and Bloodlines for 3.0 D&D compatible material for Green Renine, we had a brief discussion, I and the Green Renine staff, about the fact that I was going to put a half vampire template in there. And I was like, you know what? I don't think a half vampire is really a good idea for 3.0 D&D, but people are going to insist on doing it, so we might as well give them good rules to do it if they insist on doing it anyway. And that makes sense for things you're thinking of as home play options. Hey, here's something that we're saying is an option. We don't think it's a good option, but here's the best way to run it. But for organized play, you very much want to take the other direction. If this is a bad idea, then we don't want to let it in, even if we have reasonably good rules to define that bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, it's hilarious for a home game or something, and it's a good way for someone who's like, I really don't like this, this species that I chose. How do I get out of it? And I don't want to make a whole new character. The GM's like, cool, here's a fig, eat it. Boom, you're this other race. Done.
It's also a nice narrative excuse if, Alien Archive 7 comes out at some point and there's a race in there that's perfect for your 17th level character that you've been playing through 5-6 years of play at that point. And you're like, ooh, I want him to change to this race, but I don't want him to die over it. Well, okay, we have this narrative reason. It's the same reason we've got the mnemonic tables, right? People are going to want to rebuild characters occasionally. Here's a universal set of rules on how that works and what you can and can't do with an item that you can then use. And the GM can just say, okay, well, you don't have to buy it. You can just rebuild your character, but let's use the rules listed so we know what is and isn't a good rebuild idea.
Yeah, for example, if you want to go and change your character to one who uses a companion, which are in Alien Archive 3.
Right.
And actually, fun story about that. Companions got legalized in this new update.
Mhm.
You could buy a companion as long as it's listed on the Companions of Pact Worlds section, which is pretty sweet. And when you level up, you can pay the difference and automatically update your best friend to level up with you. So great stuff. Have a pet.
Yeah,
Be cool.
I think it's pretty cool, and I think again, like you were saying, when society makes decisions that are balance based or like narrative based, and this is a narrative based one to say it can only be ones that are found in the packed worlds because that's where we're located.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of it is, you don't want, for instance, people to bring Star Trek characters into organized play, even though if you guys all decided you want to do that at your Starfinder table, feel free. It doesn't bother me at all. But
Yeah.
there is a tonal thing that you want to encourage things to make sense so that other people who are playing at your table don't have their experience reduced by you doing something too goofy.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it gives Thirsty a really cool reward that he can give players now on Chronicle Sheets because they can just
Mm-hmm.
write custom companions and be like, hey, do you know that Rendoka you saved? Here, your new best friend.
A little baby Rank Rhoda. Oh, that would be cute.
So how many of the new Alien Archive 3 playable races are available through boons?
No idea yet. None of them are out.
None of them are
Okay.
out yet. Yeah.
Usually it's when the new convention season starts that you start seeing them. I don't, Vanessa, have they said if they're going to bring the achievement point system into Starfinder, or is that just second edition for now?
It's just second edition for now. We're still doing paper boons for Starfinder. I think that they want a season or two of Pathfinder to get under their belts, see how it goes, and then if it's great, then they'll probably shift it over to Starfinder and create less paper for everyone, which I think is good. But if there is a race that's in there that you love, there's a pretty good chance that it's going to come out as a boon sometime. I
Yeah.
know I have probably 6 or 7 or 20 unused race boons sitting.
Wow. You're
have-
way better than I am.
I don't have a bunch that are just unused because I'm like either not super interested in them or it's for a concept I'm not ready to start yet because I'm waiting for a book like, I don't know, Calm to come out. So I've got a bunch of those.
I gotta see.
I do have to say, I personally think that it should be an organized play rule that if any boon exists to allow a race to get played, whoever wrote that race gets one automatically. That one human being, if it's ever legal for anyone to play that race, if you wrote it, you get to play it.
I think what Owen is trying to say to Thirsty is that he'd very much like a Narboon, please.
You know what? I would very much like a new boon, but I was specifically thinking of an Alien Archive 3 race I wrote, and I don't know if they're going to have boons for them or not. So,
is it the Swarm Dudes?
it is the Swarm Dudes. It's the
Swarm
Smathana.
Dudes, yeah.
The swarm dudes are fantastic. You literally are a swarm of insects with a hive mind. What? It's
Yep.
kind of creepy, but it's kind of cool.
When Owen was writing that, Owen and I were chatting about some project. And I was like, "Hey, how are you doing?" He's like, "I'm bashing my head against a wall trying to figure out how you could play a swarm." I was like, "For Rogue Genius Games," and I didn't get a reply. I'm like, "Oh." So I was like,
You're under NDA in our chats. I couldn't tell you what or why, but I was very frustrated at that moment. And ultimately, I like to think that between my writing and the development, because the development process on those is very important, we got a good, cool idea for a thing that is not intuitively obvious to do, but I think in a sci-fantasy setting, you want to have all those options, right? We want to allow you to play an undead. We want to allow you to play an ooze. We want to allow you to play a swarm in limited numbers under the right circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
And speaking of things that we want players to know that they can do with the Starfinder system, let's talk about COM and its legalizations.
Oh, no. All right, so there's so much good stuff in that book. They start off by saying, all right, everything is legal in this book. Yay! Oh, wait, except there's a huge list. It's really, really big. It's a lot bigger than I thought it was, honestly.
Yeah.
There's a couple themes in there, probably for flavor reasons. All right, sure.
I'm gonna go ahead and say that, like, of the themes that are listed, I totally get why they might want to restrict Noble Scion, just because that makes a great boon. Like, congratulations, here's a special reward. Your character comes from a rich family. Enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, that might be there. It might be good for a boon. Honestly, that seems like one of those, hey, roll and get a free boon at Gen Con sort of boons. But
Yeah.
still. Yeah, those weren't too surprising. The really big ones, I think, and I may be jumping here,
Mhm.
are I'm just so salty about it. During our review, or excuse me, breakdown of Com, I
Uh-huh.
talked about my absolute favorite rule I saw in the entire book, which
Okay.
helps multi-classing, which is very difficult to do successfully, especially even-leveled multi-classing, and that would be
Uh-oh.
the Mystic's solar connection that they can get, which gives them a solar weapon. So you can be like, I'm a cool Mystic, also I got a light sword. That's pretty cool. And they got
Yeah.
rid of it. They said, no, I don't, I'm flabbergasted.
I I am wondering. So, like, when I look at a lot of the lists of things that they disallowed, I think that they're like some of the options in Com very purposefully blend the lines between the classes a little. And a lot of the things that got axed were things that blend those lines. Like, another one of the things that isn't allowed is the entire Melophile connection, which is a connection that basically lets you turn your Mystic into kind of a bard sort of character that's really good at buffing. I'm wondering if they didn't allow that because there were like full Mystic spellcasting and some buffs. That's too much. That's better than the Envoy, which I think is more debatable, but I can understand why they would want to make sure why people don't think they need to bring a Mystic instead of an Envoy. Um, but then again, in general, what I've noticed at Starfinder Society is that there's a strange assumption that Envoy isn't a good class, and I don't get it. Like, I try to shoot it down whenever I can. I was like, no, this class is great. Like,
I mean, again, organized play has this weird thing where you could already end up with a group that was all Solarians, right? And that's not as much of a problem in Starfinder it is in Pathfinder. When we were playtesting, one of the things I carefully did was playtest a group that was all soldiers to see if an all soldier group could in fact be a successful Starfinder group. And they were great, actually. Uh, they do have a tendency to simply kill everything in 2 rounds, and that's why they don't need healing because everything dies so fast.
uh-huh.
So it's a slightly different play experience. But I do think one of the things that they need to worry about more is sort of random spotlight protection, and it's
Yeah.
also the reason that some of these starship role assumptions from the core rule book don't work well in Starfinder organized play because yes, everyone has a role, and if you're all sitting around and talking to each other and making your characters, you can all pick one. But then you got the circumstance where, okay, I don't know who I'm going to be playing with next week. We all show up and we all wanted to be the captain. Well, only one person gets to be the captain. And so whoever was the best at that gets to be the captain. Then everyone else is what, terrible gunners. Um, so I do think sometimes they make choices specifically because they want to do spotlight protection, and they don't want one person to. I am the mystic in the group, and I get to be sort of the Solarian in the group, and I end up also sort of being the bard in the group, and they end up having too much potential spotlight time.
Mm-hmm.
I want a singing mystic with a gravity hammer. I don't care. That's what I want.
Okay, that's fair. You want what you want.
That
Well,
is
so
fair.
and like some of my other ideas I was excited about too were like the soldier had the key adept, which made a very monk type soldier, which I really like playing punch girls, like we've talked about before, and
Yeah.
thought that that would be really fun. And it's like, nope, can't do that. It's too much like the monk. Can't do wrathful warrior. It's too much like the barbarian. And it's like, why? Why
Well,
are we
it
Well,
may
doing
be
that?
it's too much like it. It may be that they want to let the Vanguard have its shining moment first, right? We just
Mm,
introduced 3 whole new classes, and the Vanguard can very much be a punch girl class.
mm-hmm.
And so they may want to see how the actual new classes work in this environment before they also end up adding sort of these blending half classes. And when
mhm.
we're designing we have to look at our release schedule, right? We're not going to have another book in 3 months or 6 months, probably, that has another space for that kind of material. So all
Mm-hmm.
of that has to be put in this one book. But that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that organized play has to let it all into their play environment all at once. They can say, look, obviously we have to allow the core classes. These are new base classes, whatever. Everyone's going to want to play those. We can't disallow them. That's already a lot of new material and a
True.
lot of new character concepts we are flooding this organized play with
All right.
from 7 classes to 10 suddenly.
That is
Um,
true.
so they may just need to wait and see how those things are absorbed before they have yet more competition for what are basically subclasses.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. All right. You've convinced me. I'll just
Uh,
wait.
But
another.
Vanessa, I'll tell you what you should do. So you should look over at Agunas and say, hey, what we need to do is have you run a Starfinder game on a stream, have you, Vanessa, as a player, and then let you play these concepts that organized play won't allow, because Alex really should be running a streaming game for the good of his career.
Oh no.
And then you ought to get to play in one. And see,
Owen.
that solves all these problems.
Oh no, Owen saw my Facebook post where I said I wanted to do a Blood Space actual play podcast.
I see everything, goodness.
I know.
I see all.
It's mutual. It's mutual.
Owen is strangely
no, it's
omniscient.
No, it's not. It's not fair, really. But so another thing that I actually heard is I was chatting around through the grapevine, and like sometimes if there are ambiguities in some of the rules, like they won't allow it just to be safe until a ruling can be made. So like I heard for Key Adept, the explode condition for its like 15th level ability doesn't list the area radius for the explode property.
Oh no. Okay.
So everyone's like, what's the explode? And so I guess they banned it instead of like, coming up with it. As the person who wrote that, just use 10 feet. That's what it should be. It should be 10 feet.
But as the developer, I would have put 5 feet if I'd noticed, right?
There.
So now we already have a disagreement between what you as the writer would have done, what I as the developer would have done, and our opinion doesn't matter at all anymore. The question is, when will Joe Passini and the rest of the design team have time to sit down and decide what makes sense?
30-foot explosion.
I would like to point out that my opinion doesn't matter, because if I had submitted 10 feet to Owen and he didn't like it, he would have changed it to 5 feet anyway.
Yes, if I'd noticed, which clearly I was not paying enough attention to that because I didn't fix it. You remember how earlier I said the buck stops with the developer? Well, in this case, this is my fault. So for everyone who can't play a Key Adept because I didn't put a radius on the explode, I'm sorry.
That's really heartfelt. I appreciate that, Owen.
And
I'm sure.
Lift up one hand, then slap that hand on the back with the other hand. There you go. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's very well deserved. Okay.
But actually, before we get off this topic,
before we move on,
there's one more thing. You know how it says that handbar that all content in this book is available unless it says otherwise?
Yeah.
Do you know it's specifically not on the list of things that are banned?
What?
The new Starship rolls.
Oh, that's true. The new Starship rolls are in there.
You could be a first chief.
I probably could with my punch girl. She wouldn't be doing very many other things other than tumbling around ducks and ripping off panels. So that sounds about all right.
She's punching those panels.
She's punching them out. Bam!
I had long conversations with Thirsty and several other people while developing those roles. So I am glad that I listened sufficiently for them to decide to go ahead and allow them, because I do think, and that's not just organized play. There are character builds that are legit interesting character builds that end up with nothing useful to do in Starship combat, and that is explicitly not what we wanted to have when we were coming up with the Starship role system for the core rulebook. So it seemed like it was time. We saw what the environment was actually doing. We saw what home games and such were having trouble with, as well as organized play. It seemed like time to fix it. And so that's why we had those. We also had some tasks that you can do regardless of what your role, and some tasks that don't require skill checks at all to make it easier for characters to get interestingly and usefully involved in Starship combat.
Yeah, I think this is great. It opens up a bunch of stuff. And like we were saying, in the organized play space, desperately needed, because you don't know if you're going to end up with 5-6 soldiers at the table going, okay, who has other skills?
That happened to me and James during the special. We had a soldier, a Solarian, a multi-class soldier Solarian, and then James's envoy.
Yeah.
So I know who was the captain.
No. So the problem is that none of us had engineering, or any of the computer skills, or like anything. So basically, James had to run around and do everything. We had one person who took ranks in piloting and did not have a good dexterity, so that they were failing the whole time, and everybody else was on guns, also not having a good dexterity.
Oh no!
It was I cannot go into the specifics of what happened in one of the Starship combats, but James and I refer to it as the Doritos incident, I cannot speak further of the Doritos incident other than to confirm.
What are you bringing it up other than just to tease us?
Because it exists. It's the Doritos incident.
No, all right. Well, maybe we'll pull it out of you.
So moving on.
Yeah, we'll pull the story.
Next time you see Alex, Vanessa, buy him a drink.
Yeah,
I'll tell you the Dorito story.
I will, absolutely.
Or a dessert. I think that'll work better for him.
Maybe it depends on what you buy me now.
Okay.
Continue.
Well, maybe I'll hear the story sometime. Speaking
Yes.
of, so we have a couple other little news items I want to touch on that are kind of cool. Today, on December 18th, a new Tales from the Drift dropped called The City Sings for Blood. It is another like noir take on Starfinder. And one of the things that this got me thinking was like, are these test pools for longer Starfinder fiction? Does this mean novelization? Now, I know that there's some questions of who's going to actually go through and edit all this stuff, but
James
still.
Sutter.
Well,
James Sutter.
I mean, maybe, but like he's busy doing
Well,
stuff, right?
yeah, I mean, James Sutter is now writing the Let's Play Starfighter Alexa
Uh-huh.
adventures,
He can write
right?
everything.
So
It's fine.
he can't. I've worked with the man. He's good, but he can't do everything.
I mean, contracts, bandwidths, there's a lot of reason why, unfortunately, Pathfinder Tales went away. But like, I think a lot of those, I'm hoping a lot of those contract properties were just a fiction for Pathfinder. Well, this isn't Pathfinder, so hopefully that's opened up. I would love to see some interesting novels and things for the Starfinder universe. This has got me really
I
excited.
want I think Tales from the Drift, even as it is really good. I've enjoyed pretty much every one I've read. There was one that actually Thirsty did not too long ago that's really short and sweet, but like it's really cool. I very much enjoyed that one. I also really like Jason Tondoro. Is that how you say his last name? I'm horrible.
Tondro.
Tondro. Jason
And
Tondro's.
and it's Jake now because he's on the same team with Jason Keeley, and we can't have Jason and Jason, so it's Jason and Jake.
Oh, okay. He's still Jason on my Facebook, but
Yeah,
that's
that's
fine.
why I'm telling you that you have to call him Jake. You don't have to. He'll answer to
No.
Jason, but
Can I just go Tondro? Is that
I do
acceptable?
all the time. Yeah.
Okay, so Tondro's story was also really cool, and I'm told that it's almost like a prequel to the Dawn of Flame adventure path, which I think is sweet. Also, I have a soft spot for investigators, so like that story was like, a salty SRO investigator is exactly what I needed to read about.
So
Fantastic.
I have either a theory or a suggestion, depending on whether my theory is actually what's going on or not.
Okay.
And this now no longer involves any proprietary knowledge, because up until the Alexa Starfinder, I had some proprietary knowledge since I knew that was coming and I couldn't talk about it.
Hmm.
So there are currently no novels coming out of Paizo, and novels are a hard nut to crack, and tie-in novels even more so. And very few companies have had a successful run at it. But tie-in fiction can be a very important part of making a role-playing game a more vibrant intellectual property, right? So, we Pathfinder has comics and it has had novels and it has a really good computer game now and it's got a card game. And there's a comedy series that uses it as the RPG from Hammond. Um, so that has definitely been a direction they're taking. But novels are a hard nut to crack. So you ask yourself, what would a format for Starfinder fiction look like that maybe they might have an edge to get into? And so my theory, and if they're not already looking at this, then my suggestion is what they need is Kindle Starfinder books. Because
Hmm.
we already have Starfinder on Alexa. That's already an Amazon tie-in. And you don't have to worry about printing costs,
Hmm.
which it's not that writing is insignificant, but we don't have to worry about distribution. We don't have to worry about a publisher. You can make a Kindle Starfinder book and mention it in the Play Starfinder with Alexa, and mention that Play Starfinder is an option with the Kindle book for cross promotion. So I personally think that is the way to try and break in, and you can do that with smaller pieces of fiction. There are some people that have very successful 10,000 word, $1 micro novels on Kindle.
Hmm.
So I hope that they are doing this microfiction, obviously in part so that they can explore the world. You only get so many adventures. They've only had a backstory comic, right? There are only so many ways you can do this. I think probably Mark Moreland is specifically as franchise manager looking at what do we need to do to make this franchise deeper for it to have more content, which also means that you're more likely to attract the attention of a comic book publisher or maybe an animated show or a movie, right? Whatever.
Hmm.
But I think it also, if that is successful and you're getting a pool of people that you have practiced with that can write it, you can start looking at doing Kindle books without nearly as much contract trouble and printing costs and warehousing spaces. And you already have an in that market with the Alexa Starfinder game. So
Mhm.
that's either my theory, or if they're not already doing there, that's my suggestion. That's my hope, regardless.
I think it's really cool to have the little Kindle and be like, Kindle, Starfinder, on the tech feature. Right. It's my HoloPad. I love it.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. And you're right, that is an instant, oh goodness, my video feed is all messed up because I'm using the wrong platform to do things with. Sorry, folks.
You clowns.
Just ignore all that. Those watching live just saw a bunch of my random chat as I stupidly tried to use Discord, our video platform, as a chat platform. As I went, I'm going to use Discord. No, I'm recording on that. I shouldn't do that. I know Discord. I don't know where my brain is. That was for you audio listeners, you just missed a big kerfuffle. All right, moving on. But yeah, I agree about the Tales. I think it's really going to be good. But I do agree that getting ebooks out there on like a Kindle are going to be vastly superior. And I would love to have something with a good ebook reader that is like a searchable PDF for rules without having to rely on third-party rules databases, because sometimes GMs get salty about it when you're like, no, here's how this works. I'm not, obviously not talking about Society where you have to have watermark copies or physical books, but sometimes you're just like, I'm just going to look this up. Oh, where'd you see that rule? Well, it was on this database scraping app. Oh, that doesn't count. Okay, fine.
I still sometimes have to remind people that Nethys is like the official like host of Paizo's rule content for their books. Like this isn't a third party site. Like, I mean, it is, but like it's the officially endorsed one.
No. It is not a third party site. It is a second party site.
Oh, because you're right.
Because it's endorsed.
It is directly licensed by Paizo.
Nice. So yeah, that's one step up from third party. They've leveled up. They're at the same tier as like the Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous games.
Right.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
All right, moving on. Another big piece of news was, or depending on who you are, was that Arkane Studios ships Wave 2 Starfinder minis. So Arkane Studios, they got it going on.
They do. Man, oh man, it's been like, I feel like it's been like half as much time, and we're just seeing these minis roll out so much faster than they were before. It definitely seems like Paizo's readjustment of the maker of the miniatures has borne fruit, I guess, because like minis are actually being produced, like they are real, and like people have like been linking boxes of them on Facebook and stuff, and I'm like, oh, I could buy that. That's a thought.
Yeah, I think it's good. There definitely needs to be more sci-fi minis out there that aren't Star Wars. So the fact that they're starting to get more things out there is going to be great for Starfinder players. The pawns are fantastic, and there are some decent options on Hero Forge. But really, like, we want our minis. Let us have them.
I'm super excited. Like I don't remember the Ninja Division Kickstarter and what was in it very well, but I don't think Zoe was in it, because Zoe was a character who was introduced in scenarios and then made it into Pact Worlds, which the Ninja Division Kickstarter was already done by the time Pact Worlds came out, if I'm remembering my timeline correctly. So like the fact that Arkane Studios made a Zoe miniature means that in addition to picking up like the Ninja Division stuff, they're doing their own new things, and that to me is really exciting, especially just because Zoe is hilarious and I love Zoe.
That's true.
Zoe is great.
Ninja Division clearly was an Eaxian bone flock, and there's just no question about that. And I know how incredibly frustrating that situation was for the people in Paizo, because I got to stand outside their offices and hear them be frustrated. And there are a whole bunch of contractual obligations and the rules of professionalism, and so I know that they are delighted to have found some kind of solution. I know not everyone is pleased because they're not getting exactly what they originally paid for, and it's not here yet. And a Kickstarter is always something of a risk, right? No matter who it is or who's vouching for them. I wish it had gone better. I know that I still get people telling me, hey, I see you wrote for Starfinder. I will never read a single word of it because I'm so pissed about those miniatures. And I get it. I understand. If it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. I didn't have anything to do with any of those decisions. But I hope that this means going forward, we will be able to have the miniatures that people want, And even if it's not a perfect solution, at least it's not nothing for the people that in some cases laid out hundreds of dollars. And I very much sympathize with them.
Before I forget it, Lava Bean had a question in chat about the last Paizo novelization across all rule sets. So I believe they only ever did Pathfinder rule sets, and the last one was released in April of 2017, and that was Gears of Faith by Gabrielle Harboe. Can't speak. Harboe. So there you go. All right, cool. So that is most of the news. The last little bit is that the Paizo holiday sale is on. So if there are any of these products that you're thinking is a good idea to purchase, 10% off through the end of the year. Paizo time.
And take that 10% you save and go pledge it to the No Direction Patreon, because if you are listening to this, then you are benefiting from No Direction. And this, I don't have any expenses for sitting here and doing this, but No Direction has expenses to do this. So go pledge the money you save from hearing us to that Patreon so that No Direction can keep bringing you content like this.
Yes, that would be fantastic. The Patreon money does keep content like this coming to you and keep it high in quality, making sure our equipment's up to date, keeping the lights on the web server on, all of that fun stuff. So absolutely go pledge to that. It also helps with a lot of our stuff on our website, speaking of, including a bunch of fantastic blog content on nodirectionpodcast.com, bringing to you every weekday some new discussion on gaming or fun rules content or builds or you name it, all sorts of wonderful things. So definitely go over there. And last but not
The No Direction Network is almost the closest thing that's left anymore to the old gaming magazines of the 80s and 90s, right? The stuff that used to be, for example, in Dragon Magazine or in Ares if you're sci-fi. You can get a lot of similar content at similar quality levels at No Direction. So if you are a ancient bearded grognard like I, or even a young unbearded grognard, go check all that out, because there's a lot more stuff there than you may think.
Yeah.
Yes,
and
there's a lot.
by being a patron on Patreon.
Yes.
Wow, I am so tongue-tied tonight. That will give you access to our Patreon-only Discord channel, which our Discord is one of the absolute best places for banter and discussions that is completely toxicity-free. It is a fantastic place, and we have many insightful conversations. Also, really dumb nerd jokes. So if you like either of those things...
So many nerd memes.
Certainly check out our Discord. There's a link in chat. All right. I think that brings us to the end of our news. Do you folks have any shout-outs? I'm going to start. Alex, what have you got going on? Anything you want to shout out about?
I do, but I'm under NDA and I'm super excited. Ask me in like March.
Fantastic. Well, I'll ask you next episode and we'll see what we can get out of you. Owen, I know you've got some big stuff going on.
Yeah, so right at the moment, we're still in the pre-order period for my 52 and 52 RPG program, which will provide people with a new game product every week, each week for all of 2020. And all of those products will be for Starfinder and First Edition Pathfinder and Second Edition Pathfinder and 5e. So it's a grand total of 208 products over the course of the year. Wow. 52 products done 4 different ways. We'll have in the link, we'll have the pre-order, which also comes with 500 bonus PDFs. We also have a free catalog of what those products are going to be if you want to look at that before you pledge. When the pre-order is over, the price is going up and you will no longer have the bonus PDFs. So I encourage anyone who has ever enjoyed anything I've ever written to go give me money.
Yes, give
money. I absolutely need to do that now that I got my latest paycheck. That is on the list of things to do. So thank you for the reminder.
Thank you for your support.
Oh, absolutely.
And then I'm also right at the moment on my blog, which we also have the link. I have been taking all of the feats in the Pathfinder First Edition core rulebook that don't already have Starfinder versions and writing up Starfinder versions while explaining my design and developer thought process and the steps I take. So those are specifically things that I'm doing. There are many posts a week right now that is supported by my own Patreon, links to which are in every article. So if you're interested in seeing the thought process behind converting from one system to another, or the things I consider to be important parts of the Starfinder rules that you want to dance around or build on or not invalidate with new rules, I'm doing that multiple times a week on my blog right now. And that's it for me. I think we will actually go back to Alex, because I suspect if he starts thinking in terms of Everyman Gaming or Everybody
I did.
Games instead of freelancing. He will
Yes.
suddenly discover that he ought to be promoting his own game company.
Yeah, I forgot.
Sometimes.
I got a review on a product I went out a couple months ago. The review is by Geist, who's a very well-known third-party publisher reviewer. You can check his stuff out as at enzeitgeist.com. And it's for I'm doing a series of like occultic rituals and weird stuff line called the Occult Skilled Guide. And in this product line, one of the ones I just did was called Head Beast Corruption, where basically your body withers away until you're just like a head with little arms and legs.
Oh my gosh.
So like it's super weird and like unusual. And so you go through the whole interview, and this is my favorite line from the interview. Yeah, that is a genuinely frightening thought. This PDF straddles the line between adorable and nightmare-inducing perfectly, making it my favorite corruption so far. 5 stars, seal of approval.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Corruptions are really fun for me because I like doing terrible stuff to players, which you might learn more about in March.
Which you might learn more about.
I personally want to take the Headbeast corruption and write some unofficial backstory that causes it to be where all contemplatives came from.
I love it.
Yeah.
Do it. It's great. Awesome. I love it. All right, but that's the big thing for me right now.
Vanessa, you got anything?
Let's see. So, nothing coming out very soon that I wrote. Lots of little bits here and there. Big stuff would be Cradle Infestation, the Threefold Conspiracy, Part 5 of 6. That's coming out in June of next year. So we're going to start seeing that adventure path kicking off here soon. If you like creepy, crawly aliens and greys and mind-controlling fungus and shape-shifting lizard people, that is the adventure path for you. And that is all on the box, so those are no spoilers.
Oh, this is going to be another thing where this podcast is going to have difficulty reviewing that adventure path objectively, since Vanessa will have written one and I will have written one, and
I wrote monsters in the last.
And 3. You wrote back better for okay.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Oh, woe is us. We're such industry insiders. It's like we have nothing to talk about. You're going to get the most completely biased opinions from this podcast on all the stuff that we worked on and have insight and back information. So, Well,
so I'll take a moment. There's something I said on Twitter recently that I will say here, just so we're not always just talking about good things. I've been looking back at the Starfinder core rulebook, and there are 2 terms that we used that we knew when we used them weren't accurate, but we decided to do it anyway, and I regret it. Now, these are separate from having used race instead of species, because that was not a case where we had exactly the same debate, and I think we did make the wrong call there. I wish in Starfinder it was species, but
yeah.
But for example, we used the term analog to mean not technologically derived, and that is not a proper use for analog.
It is not.
But we knew that, and we had a long conversation about it, and we couldn't find anything we liked better. And there's actually a sidebar explaining that one, at least. The other is small arms and long arms, which intuitively makes sense, but is not what those terms mean in proper weapon parlance. So I regret doing that too. And I kind of pushed for both of those. So those were calls on my part that I have, in the fullness of time, decided we should have done differently.
Thank you for falling on the sword when no one asked you to.
Oh. Well, you know what? Sometimes you got to make the best call with the time you have and the knowledge you have at the time. And people change. Change is a natural part of life.
In fact, you always have to do that.
Yes.
All right, so for the rest of my shout-outs, unfortunately, I am under the singing restraints that I have so many things I want to talk about, but am unable to do so. So I will hope that the next time we have a No Direction Beyond episode in 4 weeks, I will be able to spill lots of beans on lots of wonderful things.
Ooh.
So why don't we put a link to your most recent No Direction article, just because we were talking about how great those things are.
Oh,
yeah,
my goodness.
Do it.
Sure.
Do it.
So the most recent one, I write a new blog now that I call Random Encounters, which I take popular memes from the internets and turn them into game rule information. And the last one that I did takes that, I guess they call it the distracted boyfriend meme, where he's walking along the road and looking at the other girl. Yeah, no, I hate that meme. It's horrible. But I wish I never see it again. But it makes for a really good power, it turns out, when what you want to do is change your feat that you chose in the middle of combat. So this is a general feat that you can get at 11th level that you basically decide. You take 3 actions, takes your whole round unless you're quickened. It takes 3 actions to go, oh geez, I wish I had that other class feat or skill feat that I also qualified for, and then you get it for 1 minute. But the cost is you lose the feat you actually chose until you do a full night's rest. So say goodbye to your current feat for a while until you can kiss and make up. But for now, you can get that for a minute.
I love the idea of feats kissing and making up.
That's right.
Okay, good.
Fantastic.
Please, Twin Fate, I'm so sorry I cheated on you with Nimble Dodge. Please come back to me, baby.
Oh my god. You know what? Enough of the Nimble Dodge nonsense, okay? Oh my gosh, I'm laughing too much. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on No Direction Beyond. Until next time, go beyond with No Direction.
Bye, folks.